Russian athletes have been accused of widespread cheating.
Drug test samples deliberately destroyed and coaches who are out of control.
The IAAF has been rocked by a corruption scandal implicating Lamin Diak.
Athletics is under attack. Allegations of corruption, greed and drugs have left the sport at an all-time low.
Today, athletics managed to plumb new depths.
Horrible, awful news at the moment, and it is hard, it's really depressing, it's really sad to read.
I feel devastated to think, there's medals that I could have been awarded in my career.
For the damning conclusion of a report today, it said the IAAF must have known about the scale of doping.
Of course there was cover-up. If you can't acknowledge it, you're never going to get past it.
Were there any suspicions from you that this was going on?
You and your council should have seen some of this coming.
Is that your position untenable?
No, I think what is clear is that we needed to know more. We didn't know more.
This is a pivotal moment, a crossroads. Can trust be restored?
Do you trust the IAAF to protect your reputation?
I trust myself, but I don't know if I trust anyone else.
How will the man known by many as a great Olympian, by more as Mr. London 2012, lead the revival, the toughest challenge of his career?
This role as president of the IAAF, if you don't succeed, it will be the thing that defines you.
Can Seb Coe save athletics?
I sat in almost this very seat commentating on Mo Farah as he broke my British 1500 metre record. It was a great night, everything that we love about athletics. Absolutely unbelievable. Full stadium, great atmosphere, athletes at the top of their game. And at the very same time, the man who held the record before me, Seb Coe, was embarking on his campaign to become president of the IAAF. I don't think any of us knew what was going to happen in the ensuing months. The sport has been ripped apart, and I've come here to Monaco to ask Seb, how did we get in this mess, and what's he going to do to get us out of it?
I've been given unprecedented access to spend some time with my former rival on the track, who's one of the busiest men in world sport. Since being elected IAAF president last August, Seb has found himself under the microscope like never before.
Why did you take on this job? Because I love athletics and I'm a runner. And, I joined an athletics club when I was 11, and in my 60th year I had the opportunity to shape the sport in the role as its president.
Did you have any other options? 2012 went so well, and was there any thought that maybe there's something else I could go and do?
There were a few other things that sort of came my way and I talked to people about. And some of them were really interesting, and yes, some of them were exciting, but none of them had the core appeal of something I've been doing for 50 odd years. And the opportunity, not forever, but just to help shape something that I really do love and admire and owe everything to.
Sebastian Coe, back in his best, is the Olympic champion again. Graham gets the silver.
I've obviously known Seb an awful long time, and I think I understood how he worked as an athlete, but I've never really seen him in operation away from the track. And I've also never been inside the IAAF offices, so I'm doubly interested to see what goes on behind those doors.
So this is the end of the building I've sort of plumped myself on.
Right. How often are you here?
A lot. A good half the time. I'm a commuter. It's pretty busy at the moment because, as you know, we've got our council. We've got 3 or 4 days of really intensive council meetings. Executive board this afternoon, and this is my
abode. Your abode, yeah. You yourself have sat on boards and councils and things. But like the president of the IAAF, it's a job, isn't it?
Actually, it's an honorary post. We're all honorary members of the council. That in itself is a complication, and that's why I'm looking at the role of the president, the role of the executive board, what the council really should be doing, who it's responsible to. These are all the things.
Hey, my brother. During the previous regime, I don't think most people realise the depth of the issues, but
what was your view?
I probably thought that this was far more to do with people that just weren't making the right decisions, weren't really putting their foot on the throttle and being brave with, the changes that needed to be made. Nobody was sitting there thinking that, at the heart of the problem lay things that, were way beyond the moral boundaries.
Were you aware at any stage, at any level, of some of the issues that have now come to light?
No, I mean, the sport, any sport is awash with rumours all the time. I've often been asked this question about Russian doping. Well, for 30 or 40 years, of course, we've lived in a world of rumour around doping in Russia, in the United States. You and I were sort of old enough to remember the Eastern Bloc. And actually, those questions were asked on occasion at the council. The walls were just too high. And we do need a council, we do need people like me in roles as president where you can be challenged and frankly called to account.
Why weren't they challenged, do you think? What was it the process? Were you not able to? Did the council not do its job properly?
No, I don't think it's any one thing. I think it is that actually if you look at our ability to get into those issues, it wasn't there for the council. And also, Steve, remember at a time when the rumours were swirling, the documentaries were appearing, we did have an ethics board review into all that. We then subsequently had two big pieces of work going on that culminated in the independent commission report from WADA. There is also a police investigation going on. So I guess the question that many of us asked ourselves that were in the council at the time, was there a way of inserting ourselves into that independent process that was going on all around us? I will say this, the last couple of council meetings that I've chaired, there was a level of interrogation and a level of interest and question and debate that I have never witnessed in a council, and I've been there since 2003. So we're moving in the right direction, but there's a lot more things to put in place.
The issue, I think, for those of us who are at athletic meetings and sit in the bars afterwards, the athletes and the managers and the agents and the media people, we don't see those debates.
No.
We've never seen them. And all we've ever seen is the result, if you like, of a badly run organisation, particularly the last few years. So how do you ensure that people have faith in that process still?
You've just articulated my biggest challenge. And that is, I can and will make the changes, but it's not like a slot machine. I can make those changes, I can put the, whatever it is in place, but the tray underneath isn't going to suddenly start throwing out trust.
With former President Lamine Diack under investigation by French authorities for alleged corruption, regaining that trust seems to be top of the agenda for Seb, and it's a message echoed by other prominent council members.
What happened in the past is not what he did. I think that is what the athletes did and what our leaders did before. I think this is now a time to say that, hey, Seb, we're giving you a clean slate. You should not concentrate so much on the office, and I think we are busy with that process to get a CEO that can run the office, so that Seb can go out and look out and work with the people, with the member federations that have elected him, and make sure that he can answer all the questions there, because I think we cannot get a better leader at this stage in time to take our sport out of this critical situation that we're in.
This is about culture change. That's exactly what this is about, and he's talked about this from the time he started running for the seat. And so having a leader who understands the need for a culture change and then actually now putting that into action, I think was a great first start for the IAAF.
He was really always a tough competitor. I know he is a tough leader, and he should really use the best of himself to go out there and help us to restore the credibility in athletics.
The ongoing battle with drugs is a key area for the IAAF, and Seb and his council voted 22-1 in favour of banning Russia from international competition back in November, after alleged involvement in state-sponsored doping. That and other governance issues have been on the table in Monaco.
Well, after 2 days of meetings, it's now time for Seb to face the international press, and I think it's fair to say there's a certain amount of anticipation in the room as to what exactly he's going to say.
Our review by anti-doping teams has identified 5 countries who the Council have agreed are in critical care at different degrees. They are Ethiopia and Morocco, both of which need to implement, as a matter of urgency, a robust and adequate national testing programme, both in and out of competition. Kenya, Ukraine and Belarus have been put on an IAAF monitoring list for 2016 to ensure their national anti-doping programmes are significantly strengthened and their journey to compliance completed by the end of this year. The Council unanimously agreed that the Russian authorities need to undertake further significant work to satisfy the reinstatement conditions, so RUSAF should not be reinstated to membership of the IAAF at this stage.
Obviously, systemic doping is one of the biggest issues that you and the sport face. Is it those tough decisions, the sanctions, the banning, is that the only way to bring people to the table?
It's not the only way to bring people to the table, but you do need to work. You know, I am a great believer that it is far better to work with people, recognising, you know, challenges, recognising, you know, serious situations and trying to remedy them together than sort of saying, right, the first instinct is to ban and kick out and isolate. That's not the way the world works. It's not the way our families work. It's not the way our organisations work. As and when you get to real breakpoints where there is just a resistance or just a real internal blockage, then yes, you have to be very, very tough. And I don't think this is non-negotiable now.
The perception, perhaps in the past, for many would be that the IAAF, although on the face of it seemingly robust on drug testing, but on the other side, trying to protect their sport, perhaps shielding it from negative publicity. How can you ensure people that that is not the case?
I think the IAAF has been far more proactive than it has been protective. You know, and you know as well as I do that if you don't go fishing, you don't catch fish. And there are many sports that have taken that attitude. The IAAF hasn't, actually. A few people infiltrated a system and caused us irreparable damage. There's no point in even pretending otherwise. But actually, if you look at all the key advances that have been made in sport around anti-doping, they've more than often been driven by my sport, the athlete biological passport, the out-of-competition random testing. So actually, we paid a very high price for what has been revealed in the last few years, but actually, our systems have shown to be pretty robust. I think there is a twin challenge here as well. If we don't get the trust of the athletes back, we haven't got the families, we haven't got the parents that are feeling comfortable that this is a sport that they're going to devote time and energy and affection to, then we might as well all go home.
It's very clear that Seb is more than aware of the size of the task, and he's very bullish about it. But 6 months in, the second time he's had the chance to sit with his full council, he more than anyone is very aware that words are fine, but they have to be seen to be taking action now.
How close were you to thinking of drawing a line under this and maybe saying to Russia, you're not going to be back in time for the Rio Olympics?
My job is not actually to get as many athletes to the Olympic Games as possible. The job of the Council is to make sure that those athletes that are going to the Olympic Games are clean and in systems that are based on integrity.
It is needed to be reformed. I think it's needed to be clean, so no one really is arguing about it. And I think it's also in the interest of Russia as well. It's just the way how it will be reformed. And if these reforms will be fair
and transparent for everyone. But definitely, I mean, no one is now arguing or trying to block these reforms.
I think the sport is going to have to go through a very hard time for perhaps 3, 4, 5 years of just banning athletes when they fail drugs tests, being really aggressive, which I don't think we've had in the past. I think sometimes we've played around the edges. We've had crackdowns, and there's been a spate of athletes tested positive and banned, and then everything kind of settles down and goes back to normal.
The most important thing is now is to find a solution to set up everything for doping, to stop the bad attitude, and also to make a kind of biological passport for the official, the doctors, and the coaches, because not only the athletes.
So how do you think that went?
All day?
Yeah. Well, I mean, more the press conference. Yeah, I think that was good. I don't think there was anything there that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
I think there's now much more of a focus on the future, and actually we've gone through a mountain of reform. I mean, in one day, Steve, we have, I don't think I'm overstating this, I think we've completely transformed the way we will be operating in the next, in the next year. Inevitably, the focus today is going to be on Russia and, and the 5 countries we've identified. But the transformation is today was extraordinary. But the point I would make is, yes, we've been firefighting, but actually we've been doing a mountain of other things in the background that will come to fruition.
Good. Well, I know you've got more interviews to do.
We're really late.
Right. All right. See you later.
It's been one thing introducing reforms within the IAAF, restructuring to a more modern business model, but while doing this, Seb has also had to face a number of questions about his own integrity.
Lord Coe is facing fresh allegations of a conflict of interest over his role as an international advisor for Nike.
I've stepped down from my ambassadorial role with Nike, which dates back 38 years. The current noise level around this ambassadorial role is not good for the IAAF, and it is not good for Nike.
The first few months since you've been elected, it's been a bumpy ride. It's been a difficult period, and part of that has been because it's you. There were scenarios which I don't know whether you think it could have been handled better, or the Nike situation would be one, for example. Were you ready for that level of scrutiny?
Yes, because I've lived in that world for any number of years. I mean, anybody that lived through the 2003, 2005 bid journey, then the 2005, 2012 delivery of the games journey, that was intense scrutiny, then as an athlete, and then as a member of parliament and as a chief of staff in a political party. That's the world I've lived in. Yes, looking back, there are some things that, given the intensity of the interest, given that you mentioned Nike. I'd gone basically 10 years in a very high-profile role, chairing the London Games. The Nike question was never actually asked in technically a much higher profile situation than it should have been. Well, probably not, because there was never any question that there would be any impropriety.
Sebastian Coe, back in his best, is the Olympic champion again.
In 1984, when you crossed the line ahead of me at the Olympics, the first thing you did was you turned to the tribune and sort of aimed your gaze at where the British media was sitting, in a pretty defiant gesture towards them, and which I think summed up your frustration with the way they dealt with you leading up to those Olympics. Do you see any parallels with that situation now?
That was a very specific moment in my life. I'd had a really difficult year and a half. I was probably rebelling more about things that were being written about my family at the time, because, we sort of battle on. We never really think much about, behind the headlines. We've got friends and family and loved ones that are sitting there going, well, that looks a bit unfair. And I suppose that's probably been the toughest thing in the last few months, watching friends and family react. You're just sort of waking up to some of this stuff most mornings.
He has been, of course, attacked from every angle, really. And this is made it very, very difficult for him. He has the guts to go out there and do things. I have told him, go out and be yourself and be that Seb Coe that I knew as a runner.
But everyone's saying, we are behind this man, he's our leader and he'll lead us to better pastures. I think that's absolutely right. Will he, as one man, or this council, as 27 people, be able to ensure that every person always follows the rules? Of course they won't, because it's a big world out there and you can't follow everybody, but they're absolutely on the right path, and I absolutely believe people are 100% behind him.
So it's clear Seb's colleagues and peers are behind him. But what about the athletes?
Tonight is training night at the stadium for the local athletics club. And I know one of the parents who lives here pretty well. Fancy seeing you here. Hi, you alright? Good to see you. That's not a bad place, is it, for I like to be training? See, I had Jarrow and you had Bedford, she gets Monaco.
I know, but it's essentially the same thing, isn't it? A track and sandpit and just having fun with athletics.
You've sat on the Athletes Commission for a good few years now. You've now become the Vice Chair a couple of weeks ago. What is your view over the last couple of years? You must have been dismayed by everything like everybody else has been.
Yeah, I think dismayed, angry and frustrated at what kind of was allowed to happen to our sport and the damage that was done to it by the people who were entrusted with it and in charge at the top, and they were allowed to get away with that for too long. And I think that the IAAF has to take accountability for the fact that the way it was set up was too amateur, it was not professional enough.
There's an issue of trust there, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, that athletes have to think, if I've got something to say, I've got a federation who don't look as though they've been doing the job properly for the last period of time. Or I could go, for instance, to a newspaper or a television programme who might listen to me. And that's an issue still, isn't it? It's something that Seb, I guess, has got to grapple with.
Yeah, it's a big issue, and I think that's why athletes have to feel that there's a pathway that they can come through where they will be listened to right at the very top. And the people within the Federation have to listen to that, and they have to open their doors and say, okay, come through, because otherwise athletes will get frustrated and then they'll start going to the media. The most important thing is that we listen to those views of the athletes.
What sport will your daughter, perhaps these other kids here, what will there be a sport for them in 10 years' time? And what do you think it might look like, or what should it look like?
It should look like a sport where these kids here know that and see that if they work hard and they've got some talent and they put that work in, then they're going to find out how good they can be on a level playing field.
In 4 years' time, I want to be able to say that we look entirely different, we go about our business in a completely different way, and we've gone a long way down the road to bringing trust back to everybody that wants to be involved in us, and particularly young people who think, this looks like something I want to be involved in.
You've talked a lot about the future of the sport and sponsors and people coming to watch and young kids being inspired, and they do that because of the stars. But Usain Bolt, Mo Farah, Jess Ennis in the UK, they're not going to be there forever. What happens when they go?
We've got to find as many Usain Bolts as we can, and it's not a conveyor belt. We could be having this conversation in an American bar amongst boxing writers in the 70s and saying, what on earth's going to happen when Ali goes? Well, after Ali there's Hagler, there's Hearns, there's Sugar Ray Leonard, they do come through, but no, Bolt is a genius. What we have to do within the IAAF is to make sure that people know as much and are as excited by the David Radishas and Valerie Adams and people like that come through and are extraordinary athletes. And that isn't going to be easy. There isn't enough athletics. That's the problem. We kid ourselves, but there isn't enough athletics. We go from September through to May, where frankly there's not a lot to be talking about or writing about. We've got to remedy that. We've got to look at how we can extend the season, probably into climates where you can compete, and we've got to develop those markets. We've got to make sure that the athletes go head-to-head much more often than they do. When you have agents and managers at the beginning of the season saying, oh, well, our guy's just going to have a quiet year this year. It's a bit like, selling season tickets in Barcelona and suddenly saying, well, Messi may only play, one in every 3 or 4 games. You don't do that.
Seb's philosophy then is more athletics, more head-to-heads, extending the season, expanding where we take the sport worldwide, and better promotion of the biggest names. These are all valid ideas, but making them happen won't be easy because as a sport, it's rare that we all agree with each other.
You've got to go back to the basics. And why did you come into sport?
Because I was no good at anything else.
That's not right.
Why has the popularity gone? There have to be root cause. Maybe we're all a bit too close to it. I think it has got a bit boring for a lot of young people. Has what we're really watching changed dramatically since we were competing? Yeah, in little ways, but people were prepared back in 1983 to sit through 9 and 10 days of a World Championship and be able to. They're not going to do that now. We just have to be realistic about it. Will we have a World Championship format that is shorter? No, not straight away. Will we have that in 5 years? We have to.
There are going to be countries going, yeah, but we want to come and we want to, we might only have guys in the heat. And there are going to be people saying, I don't want just 3 jumps and a triple jump.
It's not about jettisoning our philosophy. This is now about survival and doing some really radical things. And actually, I have to put to the back of my mind the thought that that's almost certainly, in some areas, and maybe for a period in large parts of the sport, an unpopular thing to do. But in
to do the unpopular thing.
Yeah, because actually I'm not sitting here thinking that this is a 10 or a 15 or a 20-year project, Steve. It's not.
You've got to make so many changes because there's become such a big distance between the athletes and the federation and the governing body, and it's like it's become two bodies that are fighting against each other, and we need to close that and actually get them working together. And so the federation has to come right forward into this century and be run as a business and be properly accountable for that, but properly feedback and get that interaction, communication flowing both ways.
We've got these groups now, youth engagement and social media. I've got guys from Google and and YouTube on these groups, really driving some of the technologies into what we do. We've been really bad at that. We've been really bad at that. If you look at what football has done, you look at the way tennis has done this, if you look at the American sports, the NBA, NFL, they've all got great social media platforms, interactive. We're only scratching the surface of that in our sport.
Big changes, radical reforms. We all do. We do it in bars. We go, we should do this, we should do that, and nothing ever happens. Can our sport survive going forward?
When we get it right, and when we do really throw up extraordinarily exciting, athletes and big moments, we can play at the top of our game. We will make the changes, and some of that is not going to be perfect. But I can tell you, by November of this year, given where we were in November of 2015, things will look very, very different.
It's been an enlightening few days. Spending time with Seb and behind the scenes at the IAAF, I've realised that he is exactly what I expected. He's driven, he's passionate, he's confident in his ability to deliver in this role. Can he save athletics? Well, that's a question still to be answered. One thing is clear, though, he cannot do it all on his own. We've heard a lot about integrity, about trust, about reform, but it is about action as well. And he's got to take people with him. And he seems finally to be getting the council, the executive board, the new team he wants to put in place, even the international media, supporting him in this quest to reform athletics. And I think that the best that we can do is to allow him to get on with it, to trust him, and hope that he does the job right.